George left. I mean, loving him might be putting it too strongly, but he made a big impression, didn't he, Norman?
Well, definitely. I mean, I've met George on many occasions, and you know, the one thing that you can't help is just liking the guy. I mean, he's very sincere, witty. Everyone spoke about, you know, the kind things about him, and it's all absolutely true. Magnificent guy.
You were saying when you were in Manchester, Lindsay, you went to, was it Slack Alice's was the name of the club?
Yeah,
tell us that story.
A young 17-year-old, yes, but little David McCreary, who went on to play for Manchester United first team and of course Northern Ireland. The two of us went out this night, and we hadn't, first year professionals we were at Manchester United, and we hadn't had an awful lot of money in our pockets, and we decided we'd go down to Bestie's Club, Slack Alice, and have a couple of glasses of beer and a bite to eat. And we walked in, and the prices on the menu looked a little bit higher than what we're used to. But anyway, we've had coming near the end of the meal, and we're starting to get a little bit worried, and we're starting rattling in our pockets and seeing how much money we have. And the head waiter came over to Dee and myself, and he says, Mr. Best would like to see you. So we were taken over to George in this little alcove with a bevy of beauties beside him, of course. And he said, "Do you enjoy the meal, lads?" And we said, "Yes, we did. Thank you very much." And at that time, we called him Mr. Best, you know,
Sir.
you know, because we were struggling to pay for it. But the thing about it was, he says, "Look, if you want to have a drink or you want to stay on, whatever," he says, "don't rush away." He says, "Just go to the head waiter. He'll look after you the rest of the night." But
Did he pay for it?
He did pay for it. Well, we didn't anyway. That was
Somebody did.
We'll maybe get a bill in a couple of weeks. But that's just his kindness, you know. And you're saying that he didn't know the doctors for such a long time, but he has an immediate impact with anybody he meets. He's just a super fella.
There's a nice story that Dennis told about him and George exchanging tears over the telephone lines about the huge fees that players now command. Just really, his first wage was £4, 1 shilling and 9pence, and he sent 3 quid of it home to his mum and dad, and survived on £1, 1 and 9pence, and survived quite happily.
I don't think George actually. Someone like George never played for the money. No. I mean, he just loved football. And you're saying like 18 months old or whatever, he's kicking the ball in the garden. But he would just be out for the football, not interested in the money, I wouldn't have thought.
Because all the business enterprises and things, I mean, he sort of went into them almost because he was forced to. He had no real interest in any of that stuff, from what you read.
Yeah, well, everyone wanted George involved, to get involved with George, basically. That's what Bobby was saying in his speech, you know. All these offers come up, and like Bobby said there, that he would only go into some offers in business if Bobby was with him.
Just watch Norman and Lindsay as the coffin in the hearse now moves off back down Prince of Wales Avenue to the main gates, and all the people still there. Little relief for them, at least, from the rain, which didn't put anybody off today. And then it'll go back up the Newtownards Road and back along the Knock Road, and then it'll turn left up the Ballygowan Road, and that'll take it to the gates of Roselawn. And it's there that we and all the other media outlets will end our coverage and let the family go in peace and quiet. One thing that the family did say was, I mean, there'll be a lot of people going to that graveyard today and in the weeks ahead, and the family have requested that everyone should be respectful, not just of George and his mum's grave, but of all the graves around it. So the Best family always seem to think of other people's feelings as well. Back down. Do you remember, Lindsay, I mean, you were there, as we said earlier, just as sort of George was heading for the exit at United. Do you remember the mood there was at Old Trafford when he sort of said goodbye?
Yeah, well, the problem was Tommy Docherty had actually brought him back in 1973, and I was there then, and it was actually, he lifted the place, because Man United were going through a terrible time at that time and eventually were relegated that season. But Tommy Docherty brought him back, and George obviously wasn't 100% fit. And one of the last games that I can remember, because it was actually on first team duty that particular day, was against Birmingham, and we were sat with Tommy Docherty up in the seats just behind the dugouts as such. And George played for 60 minutes. He wasn't half fit, yet he was still the best player on the pitch. It was absolutely fantastic, but there was inevitability about the whole thing that I think at that particular time people just didn't think that he was ever going to get back to the full fitness and his capabilities of what he played before.
Norman, he said that one of the reasons he believed, one of the reasons behind his problem was that he felt that the team just wasn't what it should have been.
I think probably, Noel, that he probably felt himself that he was carrying the team.
Sorry, Norman, I'm going to interrupt you there, because when we're back to Stephen, he's got Sven Göran Eriksson with him. Stephen.
Assisting this He got a fabulous send-off.
Yeah, he got on. He deserves that, and all my respect to him and his family.
Sven, how will you best remember George?
Well, Saturday afternoons when I lived in Sweden many, many years ago, if Manchester United was on and George Best playing, you never lost that, because whatever fan you were, you wanted to see George Best play football, because that was art, that was fantastic.
Some 300 guests inside today, but can you believe just how many people turned out to give him this send-off today?
I don't know how many, but he deserved that, and I'm very happy to be here to show the respect to him and his family.
An uplifting but an emotional occasion inside too.
Very much so. Beautiful.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mike's left.
Sven-Göran Eriksson paying his own tribute. Norman, sorry, I interrupted you. You were just talking about the team that George found himself in at United after the European Cup triumph. A team in decline.
Yeah, it was actually that, because like Lindsay said, they got relegated, but there was a lot of comings and goings, and it wasn't to George's liking, because I think like George thought he was carrying the team himself, and in so many games he did, and there wasn't enough good players around him for the team to survive, and I think that got on George's nerves a little bit.
And then, of course, he never made it to a World Cup finals. You did,
Yeah.
a couple of times. I mean, did you think that would have made a difference to him?
It's a shame, and people say about, you know, he never made the World Cup. I was just around at the right time. You know, George wasn't in his career for Northern Ireland to qualify. I mean, we've only qualified in 3 World Cups, and unfortunately George wasn't part of one of them. It would have been great to see him on the world stage playing against the best players in the world, but unfortunately that never happened.
Yes, I mean, you can imagine, Lindsay, how frustrating it must have been for him.
Well, it must have been the greatest stage on, you know, in the world, and he never got the opportunity. But in saying that, we've been lucky with the likes of television that we still have footage of the olden days. You know, we're lucky in that respect, and there'll be a lot of kids who are at the funeral today who wouldn't have seen an awful lot of George Best, but at least they can watch it on tapes, DVD or whatever.
There's just not enough.
There isn't enough, unfortunately.
However much there is, there's not enough. You know, you keep seeing the same goals replayed at everyone's coverage, and you keep there must be more out there. Someone must have more.
I think there'll probably be a lot of amateur videos about, probably, you know, but I, for one, can never get sick of watching it over and over again, because he's turned that poor right back of West Ham inside out so many times. It's just great to watch.
The man with twisted blood, as Pat Curran so memorably said. Let's just go back to Stormont as the procession goes back down to the gates and talk to Tara Mills. Tara.
Well, Noel, the cortege is just slowly making its way down the Prince of Wales Avenue, and the crowds that had gathered to watch the cortege go in and clap as it passed on the way in before the service, they have now, during the service they went away, they've now come back. They seem to, most of the people I've been speaking to went off to houses and went off to cars to listen to the service and to watch the service. And people very much moved by the family tributes, by the friends at the service. People saying about Barbara McNary, George Best's sister, paying tribute to her brothers, saying he never blamed anyone for the troubles that he had. He brought people together, and he was the beautiful boy of the beautiful game. And she said he hasn't gone, he's just stepped off the pitch. People saying he gave so much and took so little in return. A very dignified service, very brave of the family to take part. And the cortege just making its way down now, just coming towards the gates. And lovely stories as well from Dennis Law and from Bobby McAlinden, George Best's friend, telling the story of his incredible generosity during the time that they were in America together and set up business together, and really quite touching and moving stories that that people are talking about here, and saying that it was lovely to hear those individual stories and to hear about George Best whenever he was out of the public eye, whenever he was out of the spotlight. And people saying he gave so much and took so little in return, and transcended the religious and political divide here.
Proceedings inside. I know there are some screens up at Stormont.
Well, so many stories and so many tributes from so many people here today at Stormont. I'm joined by two very familiar faces in Northern Ireland, snooker player Joe Swale and Paddy Keelty. Joe, for you, inside, an emotional experience today.
Yeah, very, very touching actually. I'm just honoured to be here on such a special day. I've grown up supporting football and been involved in snooker and football, and I've always been a big admirer of George Best, you know, so and it's just very, very fitting to be here on such a very, very emotional day.
A bit like me, you're a Liverpool supporter, but that doesn't matter today. Everyone's just here to support George Best.
Yeah, 100%, and he was a special talent, and nobody will forget that.
A celebration of George's life today, Paddy, but still hard to hold back the tears in there.
It's funny because you know, on the way in, I said it's not a day for tears, and the service was just so beautifully conducted, and at one stage I found a tear rolling down my cheek, and I thought, and I looked this way and I looked that way, and I realised that both people beside me were in floods of tears, and at that stage, you know, I just couldn't help myself. It's you know, it's a sad day, but you know, through the tears there's the smiles and the memories.
And a very, very fitting tribute today. It's been fantastic. We keep talking about it all day. So many people on the route and here at Stormont.
You know, there's so many people, there's so many stories. You know, he's the best thing that ever came out of this place. And you know, I always said that George is our diamond in the dirt. Throughout 30 years, whenever people were looking on us and thinking that Northern Ireland was a place that bad luck stories were coming out of, that George is always the diamond. And even on a day like this, you know, one of the coldest days of the year, one of the wettest days in the year, you know, he's still shining through the people that have turned out.
And through the tears as well. So many laughs and smiles today too, Joe. I think that's been the nice thing.
Yeah, it's very, very special. Very, very special. And what more can you say? You know, this just says it all.
Okay, thank you very much, Joe Swale, Paddy Keelty. Thanks very much for joining us. Back to you.
Thank you, Stephen. Well, Paddy Keelty talking about the laughs there, and there were, of course, many. I mean, not least George himself, you know, said memorable things like, you know, he gave up booze and birds, and it was the worst 20 minutes of his life. You know, there was a sense of joy, and as Paddy Keelty said on TV the other night, you know, George Best didn't have a bad life.
No, he lived his life to the full, there's no doubt about that. I know we talk about him finishing his football career probably around 27, 28, but what he packed into those years was absolutely fantastic, and the joy and pleasure that he gave to the people in that time. People could play for 20 to 30 years and wouldn't give as much pleasure as what George did.
Because in some of the tribute programs I've been watching, they'll show a player and they'll say, you know, so-and-so, Manchester United, 1973 to 1979. You think, well, George played longer than he did. And, you know, that so often, actually, that 10, 11 years.
Yeah, people think that because he finished so early, you don't think back and say, well, he's had a 10-year career at Manchester United. But like Jackie mentioned earlier in the programme, that he played something like over 400 games.
That's right.
And had a great goal record.
178 goals.
Yeah, nearly 200 goals. It's absolutely phenomenal at the highest level.
Yeah. And a lot after that. And I was looking at some American websites during the week, and you know, although you know, soccer's not as big as it was back in the
There were
early.
some big names out in America then, so there was Pelé and obviously Beckenbauer, and I've seen footage there of Steve Archibald and all went out there as well. But you've got to remember, George started at 17.
Yeah.
You know, like young man here beside me started at 17,
Yeah.
maybe 16 he started, you know, but you know, 10 years isn't bad, so it's not.
One of his favourite goals, I think he was quoted as saying, was when he was in America.
Yes.
I think that's been shown quite a
That
bit.
was in San Jose.
He turns everybody inside out.
He's beaten one, he's beaten two, he's beaten three, he's beaten them again.
Goes back to beat him again.
Yeah, that was remarkable. Although not my favourite, but people have been writing in with their favourites. There's a few here. Obviously Benfica, the 5-1 game in '66, and then of course the 4-1 game in '68. Northampton, of course, in 1970 when he hit 6. Poor goalkeeper that day.
He looked a bit cheesed off and he scored the 6th.
He wasn't happy, sure he wasn't.
Just leaving on the post.
I want more. I want more. The Northern Ireland England game in May '71, and of course everyone talks about the Scotland game. That it was George Best 1, Scotland 0. Were you there?
I wasn't at that one, no. It's, but I'm not as old as I look. I've had a hard life, no, yes.
I definitely wasn't there.
You're just very modest. All right, we're going to see what's happening at Stormont with Donna.
Yes, Noel, as the hearse makes its way towards Roselawn Cemetery, Jackie has joined me here again.